This is a call to order of a regular meeting of the Personnel, Pension, and Insurance Committee of the MDC, Monday, April 29th, 2024. Secretary, do we have a quorum?
Yes, we do.
Okay. Are there any public comments relative to agenda items? Once again, are there any public comments relative to agenda items? There being none, we'll move to item 3, approval of meeting minutes of March 24th, 2024. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve?
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any additions, deletions, amendments? Any abstentions?
Abstain.
Okay. Commissioner Gentile's abstaining. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, passes. Item 4, discussion of draft employee climate study, RFI.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Kelly Shane, Chief Administrative Officer here at the MDC. I just wanted to share with you the draft of the RFI. I think you received it on Friday, last Friday, the 26th. Wanted to give you a brief overview of putting this together. It was a group effort of myself and those who are much closer to the scope of this type of effort, Jamie Harlow and Rita Kelly. I put together the meat of the RFI in general based on the same structure and procedures as developed for the Technology Committee when we did the RFI for the waste that we did in 2023. So you'll see the same process and procedure throughout the document. We worked on the scope together, and by working on the scope, we researched a bunch of blogs and articles, discussed with consultant firms and other agencies and state public entities who also conducted employee climate surveys. And what we found was there was a real need to focus on the software and technology that is employed for these surveys because it's been ever changing and most important in the application of the survey. And so those that we researched, McKinsey, Deloitte, AIHR, Culture Monkey, those were some of the blogs, some of the articles we reviewed. Everything was about best practices and how best to conduct a climate survey, which put together this scope. So I'm assuming that you've all had a chance to review the scope or the RFI that is in front of you. Again, it's a request for information, not an RFP. So it's really asking for industry to further discuss with us what we would want to put in an RFP to make sure that we get quantitative, important data that we can get from our employees so that we can positive improvements where necessary, but really to analyze the data that we receive, ensuring anonymity, positive feedback, and make sure that we have the opportunity for benchmarking, which one of the things that I learned from going through all this research was the ability to continue to conduct employee climate surveys throughout. And I think, you know, if Rita or Jamie, if you wanted more information, because they have done these before, would attest to, the more that you can do them on a periodic basis, smaller versions on a periodic basis, the more you can gauge how you're doing, how you're improving, if there have been improvements, how your employees are liking them. And so over time, you get to benchmark against yourself, but also by utilizing the data that you can glean from the software that you choose, the application that you choose, you're able to benchmark also against industry, your industry, and other industries like you, which does lead to identifying more opportunities for benchmarking against your other utilities, other public entities. So that's what I learned personally through going through this. I don't know if you have any questions specifically about the scope, or if there's anything that you would like to add at this time, Rita or Jamie. Okay.
I guess one of the things I'm not clear on, looking at this, who basically is going to be doing the study? Who's going to be conducting the study? Is that going to be carried out by our in-house staff, or are we going to have someone who's independent outside?
I think the RFI is to look at the technology and also, get industry best practice information from those who are responding. What we've seen through our research is that the internal entity can conduct the survey, and you can identify consultants to review the data that comes out of those surveys and present to management or help management put together an action plan after. You can do it all internally. There's lots of different methods, and that's the purpose of the RFI, right? Because our hope is to glean that from the requirements we put in there for people to respond to.
Well, I guess,
I
Commissioner Salemi?
mean, I read through the whole thing. I understand, we're looking for like the best practices in doing this, and I certainly hope we can get this done soon. I mean, I just think it's already been a while since we started this. But I would say to the chair, it was my understanding that we were looking for a consultant to actually conduct a survey. That I don't know that I don't know that we've had, if that's going to be in front of us, okay, I guess we could review it. But my understanding was that we were looking for, at some point, an RFP for a consultant from the outside to conduct this survey. Was my understanding. If I'm not correct about that, please, let me know, because I think that's what we said at earlier meetings here at PPI.
Well, that's not far afield as far as my view of the situation, is that we really basically wanted someone who was independent, because we did not want our people, basically, who were going to be taking the survey to have any thought, one way or the other, that essentially they could be identified. Plain and simple. We're not finished yet. Just a minute, please.
Thank
you. Anyone else? Yes.
Two things. Number one, the questionnaire is going to go out. It's going to go out to current MDC employees.
We haven't made that decision.
Well, as a question.
Well, no, I mean, I would think that basically we would want to survey both current employees, and we would also basically want to get some response from people who have left, including those people who have retired.
And the reason I asked that question is that people that have left, retired, whatever, things have changed for the better, I'm hoping, maybe not, And so it would seem that in my opinion, the current employees would be the ones to give us the best input, not anyone that's already left, for whatever reason. Number two, on the question of who would do the survey, I kind of have faith in our people, and I know I've done a few of these surveys at the different companies I work for. It didn't matter whether it was a consultant or whether it was the company itself. Everybody's always has that, oh, gee, should I do this? Am I going to lose my job? I mean, you're going to have that. So I don't think it really makes, in my particular opinion, any difference one way or the other. But I'd like to see it by our own people.
Mr. Chair.
Just a minute, I'll see if.
I would only respond that I think that we said that.
Yeah.
We wanted an outside consultant. I think there's plenty of reasons to believe that if you're going to ask, questions and you were looking for the software that could provide some level of confidentiality to the questions and everything, so that everybody gets a question and gets an answer, and Just, in past, you could just fill it out in writing and put it in a box somewhere without your name on it, and, but I think that that's more or less the way that I understand it. And I think it's like, negotiations with, the vast majority of our employees are under the contracts, the three contracts that we have. So the vast majority of employees come under those contracts. I would call those current. If you're asking who, anybody, and then all the EE&I and everyone else that's, involved at the MDC, I don't know if we need to ask anybody that's not an actual MDC employee at the time. But, if negotiating a contract, I've been part of those. If you're negotiating a contract with the actual staff of the people, then the staff become, responsible for this. I think that a lot of places, the size of the MDC have like a labor council that works, that takes the place of that actually negotiates with the unions, and it gives the staff like a level of, they don't have to be like right in the middle of this. They're like a step back from it, and they can do this without having to be, deeply involved, with negotiating how it's going to happen. So my understanding is that it was going to be with outside consultant. That being said, I understand why we're doing this RFI. I mean, we're going to understand the kinds of technology and everything that can be used in this. And I just hope that this is going to happen soon. And I would ask, is there a date when we think we can go ahead with this? At least with the RFI for now. So.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. So let's go back to our last meeting. This board committee agreed to go to an RFI process. So everything I heard was trying to tell us how we're going to do the process. And the whole idea of the RFI was to find out how everybody else does the process. So I think we're jumping ahead of ourselves. The whole concept of this was, let's look at best practices. Let's look at how others have done this. As Kelly has said, and Rita and Jamie have done this in the past, there is technology out there that is used to interact with employees, and it's done anonymously. There's no interaction with employees and persons from the MDC. The board will find out through the RFI process. You'll hear about, you might hear about firms that have had the staff do the computerized part of it, and then have a consultant come in and analyze the data. You might find a consultant that comes in and does everything. The whole idea of the RFI was not predetermine how we were going to do this, but to look at how it's been done in the past. The other reason why we went to an RFI, because we don't know how much it's going to cost. So we're trying to fine-tune the scope so that we get as much proposals as possible that are apples and apples and not all these different variants out there, so that we can get an idea of how much this is going to cost. We don't know how much it's going to cost, and that's why we started the RFI process. The issues about, and I have Rita here and Jamie, the issues about how you talk to outside retirees or terminated employees, that's a whole nother discussion that I think we're jumping in front of. Let's have the consultants that do this for a living tell us how it should be done. That's the point of the RFI. And then the board can decide, what would you like to do? So that's what we did, and that's what we're proposing to do. I don't disagree. Most of the firms that do this have the software and provide the consultant services. Some are just consultants that utilize software. But we don't know. We're looking for information from the industry to find out how is this best done. So that's what we did.
And if I could just add one more thing, Commissioner.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Curry.
Yes. Somebody else?
Chairman Curry.
It's Commissioner Curry with question.
Yes.
Okay. In listening to the comments, in my mind, a climate study is just a different name for a different type of audit. And most certainly, I don't think any of us would propose that we would audit ourselves on an annual basis. But if you look at the bottom of page 5, 1.3.2 background, I think it kind of sums up a lot of what's been questioned and some of what's been said, that this appears to be the first step in leading up to the RFP. It's going to help us determine what should be in that RFP when it's sent out. And while I agree with Commissioner Salemi that it would be nice that we could do it tomorrow, in my mind, we need to adhere to some steps in the process and let the process itself work. And this is simply, this RFI, I think, is just going to give us some guidelines in how this committee will develop a final RFP to then be sent out to a select number of consultants. Thank you. Oh, I do have one question. The first line in that section under background, could someone define for me what district board of directors are?
That may have been in the last RFI, and I didn't change it. I'm sorry.
No problem. I just wondering if there was a group out there I was unaware of.
So it's the board.
Yeah.
So I get confused myself sometimes. All the different boards and committees and names for them.
It should have been Board of Commissioners.
I mean it, I'm serious. The only, I would add, Mr. Chairman, to sort of respond about the survey itself, is I think, like I said, the vast majority of our employees are contract employees with, through collective bargaining. And I think that, that they would have to be reassured that by understanding whatever tools are going to be used to collect this data, that if there's some level of confidentiality that they believe needs to be there, they'd have to be convinced that it's there. That's all I would, there's no point in conducting a survey that everybody doesn't sign on to or have faith in. So at some point, I think that they're going to have to be involved in it as well. So, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Drake?
Yeah, this isn't that, to me, not that complicated. And if there's people we're going to that do this for a living, this is what they do. Why don't we just go out for a proposal? Why are we screwing around with RFI? There's some people might do bigger scopes or smaller scopes, but we'll go out for proposals, and whoever is what we want,
Well,
we do it. I don't know why spend, I understand there's a place for RFI, I just don't know. And it's okay here, it just seems to me, just go for proposals. If there's people who do this, that's what they do.
so in the last meeting, Commissioner, we talked about budget. And as part of an part of an RFP process, procurement rules, you don't bid something if you don't know what the price is. You must have the price. We have $50,000. So if we bid something and this price comes in at $50,001, we can't award it. So the concept of the RFI was that we could baseline and understand.
If we weren't asking for any dollar shares, how is that
You can ask whatever you want.
I
That's
understand.
the process, right? The process is you're going to develop a scope through the RFI process. You're going to be developing budgeting information about how much this software costs. There's a lot of things we don't know. The things that have been talked about tonight hopefully can be answered. For example, is it best practice to talk to existing retirees or persons who've been terminated or persons who have resigned? Is that best practice? Other questions about, what is the role of the consultant in analyzing the data? What do you expect? What does the committee, the board expect And how do you expect to analyze this data? So those kinds of things, this board, this committee will learn as part of the RFI process, and it may change the scope. It might broaden the scope. You might need more than 50,000. You might need 250. I don't know. But the whole concept of this was to develop, as we did with the technology, to try and develop a scope, if possible, that would be used to draft an
No,
RFP.
I understand, it just seems like,
Yeah.
it's a lot of work for a company to do two or
Sure.
three things for something this small, but it's fine. It just seems to me we're just overkilling something. Again, look back at the last meeting, we had 8 people quit last year, so I don't think everybody hates us, so. I don't know, just seems to me going out for proposal would answer it, get some, answer all $150,000, $200,000, we're not gonna, we probably wouldn't do it. But
Wouldn't do it, or you bring it back for
I
discussion?
wouldn't do it. Again, we had 8 employees quit last year.
Who wouldn't, but I'm saying the.
No, Fred, you gotta bring it back, right, I'm just saying me, that's me, but anyways, okay, that's fine. I think what they did is pretty good.
I just want, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask the commissioner, are you saying that 8 employees is a lot or not a lot or what? I'm not sure.
If you look at the whole world, usually, and we have a good economy, usually you lose about 10% of the employees a year for finding new jobs and quitting. And that's it's actually 12%. Which means we should be losing 40 to 50 employees a year just because they want to do something else in life, which is not a problem. We only lost 8. And again, doing this is fine, but I just don't think it's this huge problem we have, but let's find out,
Yeah, I would
fine.
just add to that, Tim, that in the past, the MDC didn't lose anybody.
right?
So, I mean, and I think there's a reason for that, and
Yeah.
so, if you went from 0 to 8, you at least ask why, I mean, our sort of retained
I
employees,
think the process is good. I'm
we
just
have,
saying,
we have
they
great.
do it 2-3
We
times
have a
over
great
for a little-
pension plan, we have a great work environment, so there's reasons why people, didn't leave. And, I think that trying to measure it by by a percentage doesn't take into account the history of the MDC and how well we've done with our employees. I think that we've done really well with our employees.
Oh, no.
We continue to.
No, that shows it. If you only lose 8 a year, obviously we have good stuff.
That doesn't mean we shouldn't do a survey to find out where we stand with the latest contracts that we signed last year, 22, did we sign them, or 23? The 3 contracts, were they last year or?
It was 22.
22.
No, I agree with you, but if this is like 25 grand, you say, yeah, okay, this is a good survey. If it's $250,000, I don't think I'd vote for it, but I don't know.
Well,
But let's see what happens.
The point
Let's
is,
see
the
what
whole
happens.
point of the
Yeah.
process is to enlighten all of us into how is this done? What's the best practices of how this is done? To the commissioner's point about no one left, well, that's not true. No one left. I mean, 8, I don't know what the numbers were in 80, but
Probably
we
zero,
are well,
Scott.
but we are well below the market, and I think the market, Jamie, you had the numbers for, what's the average, retention rate for the, you had the number there, was 8% or whatever it was.
Jamie Harlow, Director of HR. The Bureau of Labor Statistics does kind of studies on turnover rates it's done kind of quarterly, but if I'm generalizing, in 2019, it was 6.2%. We are below even that. And that's, again, a low turnover rate because most businesses do expect a 10% turnover rate. Even with our retirements, which are the vast majority of the ways people are leaving, even on years where we've had 30 retirements, we're still not at that number. So again, definitely below the norm in turnover.
Could I ask, is that for public agencies or water sewer companies, or what is it?
I don't know who exactly is included in the survey, but it's the Bureau of Labor Statistics, which does a lot of surveys on national labor markets.
I understand, I'm familiar with it. I'm just wondering, because this is a public agency, it's different than, a private contractor, doing the same thing.
Listen,
Well, thank you.
yeah, listen, I think that we owe it to our employees, to our people, to ask them. I don't think it's unreasonable to ask them what they think. And who knows? They may be perfectly happy, they may not. I think that if this study is conducted in accordance with professional standards and that you hit all of the benchmarks in terms of the process and procedures, then essentially we just have to let things fall where they may in terms of our people responding. That's basically, I think, the thing that we're looking at here. And no one knows basically what they're going to say or what they're thinking. But once again, we've gone through a lot of changes. And I think that, we have an obligation to ask. Nothing more, nothing less. And, you know, we may be pleasantly surprised, and then again, we may not. I don't know. But at least we've done that. We've gone through the process, and I think that that's not unreasonable.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes?
uh,
Mr.
this
Desai?
is Commissioner Desai. Thank you. Yeah, going through, I read the RFI and going through and hearing the discussions. I think we should just follow the process. The RFI lays out the intent, and you know, right now we are trying to find, you know, how these things are done, right? What is the latest and greatest? I mean, you know, things were done 10, 15, 20 years ago, whenever, and everybody has different experience from that era or whatever. So I think today we are trying to find out what is out there, greatest and latest, and how things are done. And basically, you know, this is the first step of the process. And as Commissioner Curry said, you know, I think let's go through process. Let's let the consultant tell us, you know, what's out there, how these things are done. And if we get 4 or 5 responses, we will hear from different consultants. There might be a common theme, and then we can develop our own, you know, RFP and ask them to address A, B, C, D, E based on what we find. So I think, right, you know, I think we are at a point, and we are at the right point. We have RFI. At least I believe it's sufficient, and we should move on, and you know, let's see where it ends up. Thank you.
Chairman Development, Chairman, Vice Chairman, sorry.
Kelly, what's a time frame for the RFI?
We have usually put it out for 30 days, like we did with the other.
That was a long so
That may have actually been out for longer than that, I believe.
so it would go out for 30 days, then you get respondents, and then what would the function be after that?
We would provide the proposals to the PP&I committee, which I believe are those that would be set to be the reviewers of the submissions. And we can provide each, just like we did prior, we could provide them with a list of questions, each one. You could invite them in to present to you on, you know, what their proposal was about, or their submission, I should say, not proposal. And and we can get whatever industry information you want from that process, and then we can move forward, you know, at your, what you choose to do.
What would you predict would be a reasonable amount of time? Because we did have a rather lengthy process when we went through it in technology, but it was sort of
I would want to see some of the results from the submissions. I did want to call your attention, just while I'm speaking, some of the points that were made here on page 6 and into page 7 on the technical submission requirements. We do ask for, as part of the software, are there employee communication features to ensure employees understand the purpose of the climate survey and how their input can contribute to positive changes in the workplace. So we do address communications with employees and also with management on the back end to make sure we implement any changes that we find from the survey. The second large bullet, we talk about not only based on the technology solution that they identify, provide information regarding any additional industry standard scope requirements the district should consider in its procurement planning for conducting a successful survey. So you're giving them the opportunity to provide those best practice information. And then the third bullet actually requests information about the company that is responding. Are you a software company? If you are a software company, provide us some successful use cases. And to your point, Commissioner Salemi, for clients of similar size to the district, preferably public entities such as municipalities, state agencies, or public utilities. So we have identified that as something we want to see software that's successfully used with other public entities just like ourselves. And lastly, the last bullet is if you're an employee climate survey project provider, which would be one of those consultants, we're asking them to include their experience of successfully delivered projects of similar size to the district, preferably public entities. And they should highlight their project scope, the technology utilized, the participation rates they've achieved through that technology, and the general results of the survey. And so we're looking for costs. We also identify the need for costs of what the costs are. So we are looking to gather that data, which would help us to determine to determine next steps, scope, and then we could probably better predict the time.
Just quick question for Scott, and maybe you can't answer this, but I like to know where we are, and so I know when we get there, when we get this information. Have you met, as leadership and human resources, met with the unions in regards to this same question? And because I don't think I saw anything, so I maybe I missed it. And do you have any information on that? Because it'd be interesting to see what you got from the union as you met with them and what we get when we do this.
Yeah, we haven't met with them specifically on this topic, in terms of a climate study. As you know, we met with the unions almost 2 years to negotiate the last contract, partly because each one of the unions was changed over once with leadership. We had our last union, 3713, actually we had 2 changes within that time frame of negotiation, so we had to go back and renegotiate everything with the new leadership. That's okay. It was a positive thing. So I think you will say. I mean, I know you've talked to the unions. I know you guys met with the unions and had dinner with the unions. So my understanding was the feedback from the unions on that was, and what I've heard back from the unions is. They're very happy with the union contract. We didn't take anything financially from them. We actually gave them money. We asked, which was to reduce the administrative burden between the unions, to simplify for payroll and for HR, for timekeeping. So, we've had very positive feedback on the union contracts were ratified relatively quickly. But in terms of talking specifically about this, no. Jamie meets with the unions weekly on different issues, and obviously there's always issues. Bud, you and I have talked about some issues, union issues in the past. There's issues. There's always issues, right? Mm-hmm. And we deal with those, and we deal with whether they have to go to a grievance and go to the labor department, but we believe that we've done a great job with the union negotiation. They're very happy with that union contract.
Thank you.
Well, look, I think this is really a policy issue. And policy is set by the board. And I think that this is something that we as commissioners can look at and can ask questions. And if we don't have answers, and we'd like answers, rather than relying on anecdotal information, I think that it behooves us, once again, to ask and to see what kind of answers we get. It's nothing more than, or nothing less than that. And I think that we owe it to our employees to ask the question. How are we doing? And how do you think we're doing? It's nothing more than nothing less.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Curry.
Yes.
Yeah, I would just like to say that it appears we're kicking the same can down the road twice. We've already determined this. We're only here today to talk about the next step in the process and whether this is what we want to do. So maybe we could just get back to that.
Yep. Mr. Salemi?
Turn this off, excuse me. I sort of agree with that, but I think that what we can do, and I'd certainly be willing to put it in the form of motion, what we can do is, I think what we've been presented with is an RFI that, will help us and help the staff understand, where to start with an RFP and with the actual program to do this. And as I said before, my only concern is how long will this take? And I think we're not asking, in this RFI, we're not asking a consultant to do any research. We're asking them, as experts in the field, tell us how you do this. So they're not going to have to spend any time, researching it. I think they already know. So if we're, if everybody thinks that this RFI could be sent out and we could get responses to it within 30 days, I'd say, why don't we go ahead and do that? And then when we get it back, this committee can get a look at it and decide where it wants to go with the rest of it. But I'm willing to sort of, get the results in from the RFI, see what we get, and then make the decision then. So I'd make that motion but I'd have to, how soon could you get this out, Julian? I mean, that's, you said it's going to be in their hands for 30 days, but how soon can we, it's pretty much written, so how soon do we get it out?
I could probably get it issued within a week. We have to advertise it, and I also want to make sure that we get this out to certain companies.
Sure.
To make sure that, they need to register and those types of things in our system. So
Right.
we'll want to direct message certain companies to make sure that they see it.
And then, how many days would you have it out there before it got back to the?
I said 30
30
days,
days,
but
yeah.
it's an RFI, so, it depends. The longer you have it out, the more opportunities you have for responses. If you put it out for too short a time period, you may not get anybody to pick it up and say, okay, I have time to respond to that. They're not all going to see it on day one.
So you're saying 30 days?
I say 30 days is reasonable. If you want to try 3 weeks, you just may not get responses.
You're comfortable with 30 days?
I'm comfortable at 30 days.
So I'd make that motion that we, I hope you understood that, as I'm making a motion that we have the staff get it out as soon as they can.
Sure.
Which you expect to be, a week or so. And that we put it out there for 30 days, and that when you get the results back, it comes back to this committee. So, good, I'm sorry, but I made that motion, so.
I'll second it.
I'll second it. I also, there are no guarantees at all, but this RFI is quite different from the technology RFI, which by intention was, we cast our net as broad as possible. Here we know what we're looking for, a climate study. So I do think, and I appreciate all the work you put into this, it's very tight and looking for something very specific. So I think we will be better positioned to move to the next decision point and proceed to an RFP.
Motion has been made and accepted, seconded, that essentially staff will work on the RFI within the week and do whatever else needs to be done to prepare it for distribution and to including the appropriate advertising. And then it will be, I'm going to say broadcast out for what, 30 days?
Yeah, that's.
At which time
Yep.
we will see what responses we got and it'll come back to committee.
So you're comfortable with that?
Yes. And it will probably cross the next meeting, so I will give an update at the next
Sure.
meeting on where we are and if we have received a certain number of responses.
Thank you, that's.
Yep.
That's good.
All those in favor of that motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
We can move on to item 5. Report prior month's retirements, resignation, terminations, including employees' years of service, gender, race, and classification.
Good evening, Commissioners. Jamie Harlow from HR again. Per the request, I have to report that we had 2 retirements. One was a white male from Local 184 with 20 years of service, and the second retirement was a white female with 24 years of experience, also from the Local 184. And that is the conclusion of my report on the prior month's resignations, terminations, and separations.
Questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving to item 6, opportunity for general public comments. Once again, opportunity for general public comments. Commissioners' requests for future agenda items. Once again, commissioner requests for future agenda items. I will entertain the appropriate motion.
To adjourn.